In just minutes, Idaho Governor Little will update us on Idaho's current unemployment situation. The governor is also expected to update us on Idaho's economy. All of that is coming up in just minutes. As soon as that begins, we will take you there live. And in the meantime, let's get you caught up on some of the state's unemployment numbers. Right now, the Idaho Department of Labor is reporting an unemployment rate of 11.5%. To put that in perspective, back in March, before businesses started shutting down, Idaho had an unemployment rate of 2.5%. That 2.5% was a record low. And this 11.5% we have right now, well, that is a record high. It is higher than the 10.2% that we saw in December of 1982 and higher than the 9.6% that we saw in June of 2009. The Department of Labor estimates that 79,500 jobs were lost in April due to the coronavirus. An issue many of you have discovered during COVID-19 are wait times with the Department of Labor. But earlier this week, the Department of Labor announced they have hired a Boise call center to help field some of their calls. So now, instead of calling the Department of Labor, you are asked to call the number on your screen. That's 833-410-1009. When filing unemployment claims, some have waited hours and others say they haven't been able to even get a response, as the department has been hit with a flood of calls. The call center will provide 30 new people to help with the calls. Another key change is the phone number people need to call with questions. The pandemic is what ignited the skyrocketing unemployment, so let's take a look at some of the latest COVID-19 numbers in our state. The new numbers in yesterday show that 60 new confirmed COVID-19 cases in 12 counties. Among the hardest hit, Cassia and Jerome counties with 10 new cases each. 7 new cases were reported in Canyon County and 5 new cases were reported in Ada County. Right now, you can see Governor Little is speaking now at the news conference. Let's listen in.
Pandemic was on no one's radar. But later in January, when the first coronavirus case was confirmed in the United States, we began preparing Idaho to respond. There were many unknowns, and to a certain extent, there still are. When community spread was confirmed in multiple parts of Idaho in March, where people are contracting coronavirus, and we didn't know the source of the transmission in their community, we relied on science and put measures in place to abruptly show the spread of this unwelcome disease across our state. The no action alternative would have been catastrophic. Our collective efforts worked and continue to work. Idahoans have done a tremendous job protecting themselves and their neighbors. By the end of April, we saw a consistent leveling off of new cases. While many businesses remained open and continued to operate, others had to curtail operations due to the pandemic, leaving thousands out of work. Out of work Idahoans filed more than 145,000 claims for unemployment benefits during the 11 weeks since the COVID-19 state of emergency declaration. Almost 2.5 times the total number of claims filed in all of 2019. My heart goes out to all those who lost jobs or income during this global pandemic. Despite the hardship, we are better off in Idaho than elsewhere. Idaho was one of the last states with a confirmed case and one of the first states with a concrete plan in place to reopen the economy safely and responsibly in stages. Today, nearly all businesses can open their doors. Idahoans are getting back to work safely. However, more than 60% of Americans who are out of work because of the pandemic earn more with enhanced unemployment benefits than they do from their normal wages. This is not a bad thing, but it may create some hesitancy to go back to work. Now is the time for us to provide Idahoans with a financial incentive to return to work and ensure our economic rebound is swift and robust. To accomplish that, we are providing $100 million for Idahoans as return to work bonuses. We are working with the Idaho Workforce Development Council on a plan to make federal relief dollars available to Idaho workers eligible for unemployment benefits since March as a return to work bonus. The one-time return to work bonuses will be provided to the worker upon return to the workplace. Under our plans, $1,500 cash bonuses will go to those working full-time, and part-time workers will receive a $750 cash bonus after return to work. Information on eligibility and how to apply will be finalized by the Workforce Development Council and Coronavirus Financial Advisory Committee, and we will be available at rebound.idaho.gov by June 15th. I want to thank Idahoans for their determination during this difficult and uncertain time. I'm confident Idaho will rebound more quickly than many other states. We have been through challenges before, and we have come out stronger. With that, I'm glad to take your questions on this issue. Melissa.
Is there going to be any priority given to those who had to wait a long time or still haven't received their unemployment benefits?
Well, they'll get both. And of course, even as delayed as some of those payments are, they will receive this bonus plus their accrued amount, depending upon whether it's traditional UI or the PUA. So they'll get both.
But there's going to be no numbers given.
No, this is a first-come, first-served program, basically to have an incentive for both the employers and the employees to put people back to work. Yes.
This question is from Scott Logan. Is the call center getting less overwhelmed? Do you have plans to add any additional staff?
I believe so. I haven't visited this morning, but we have given serious consideration to ramping up the number of people in the call center. The limiting factor is in these complicated claims, and there's plenty of them. In these complicated claims, the call center can handle some of it, but then some of it has to go to people that understand the intricacies of both the state plan and the old federal plan and the new federal plan. So that's kind of our limitation. But if we don't hit that limitation, we will put on more people in the call center. Yep.
John Soul from the Statesman. Today there was a report out about jobs increasing nationwide and maybe a sign that the economy is recovering. What are you hearing about Idaho?
Well, it's varied around Idaho, but you drive down the street and you see, we need help. It's help wanted signs. So it's varied. Obviously, the construction, particularly the residential construction business, all over the state is going well, as has been the case from the get-go on this. Anybody related to the hospitality industry in any way, shape, or form, travel, hotels, restaurants, bars, any of those are where there's issues. Even as fully opened as we are, there's some hesitancy of people to go back to work. So it's varied. Manufacturing jobs are coming back. Things look good from that aspect. But until people have more confidence, the hospitality industry is going to continue to be challenged.
Over the last few weeks, we've got questions about the physical Department of Labor offices that are in some Idaho communities. Is there a plan about getting those opened up to kind of help some of these people that are trying to get in and figure out issues?
Well, we went, and matter of fact, Idaho, I think we're second or third in the nation with the percent of our claims that are handled online. And basically, all those offices are the ones that we had previously are a place where you go down and get online. So there aren't the resources and the skill set there, particularly these complicated cases, which is what we're starting to get to. We're starting to get the more generic cases out of the way, But the real backlog is in these more complicated cases where we have to do verification, in some instances back 3, 4, and 5 employers to do the verification by law. Yes, Keith. You do good math, Keith. Well, we anticipate it won't be enough, but we're putting this out as bait to get the economy going. If we said it's going to be available all the time, our incentive, and I can let Alex talk about it, our incentive is we want people, if they come to a fork in the road and it's, shall I start next week or shall I start in 2 months? If this runs out, as actually we hope it does, we hope everybody goes back to work, we want that incentive there. And the longer we put it, the slower people will go back to work. Alex, do you want to address that?
Thank you, Keith. So to your question, how many Idahoans would be served? It's going to depend on how many come back full-time versus part-time, since there's tiered grants. We anticipate that this would serve around 70,000 Idahoans. And certainly, one of the things we're looking at is how much will be left over unused from the small business grants. And depending on how much is unused from those, we might be able to supplement this program to a larger extent to cover all Idahoans who might be eligible.
Go ahead, Keith. Well, Keith's question is a widely reported story about some of the claims in the state of Washington basically having a cyber attack. I think the money was routed through Africa, where a lot of cyber attacks take place. That has been part of our issue, is that if you look at Idaho, our fraud prevention laws, not only the federal laws, but the state laws are very high about what we have to do. And so that has been part of the issue with our system being slow, is all that confirmation we have to do to prevent fraud. It breaks my heart about these people that are not getting their benefits, but there's these protocols from either the federal government or in law that we have to go through. I'm sure that clever people are probably going to get into the system, and some of it is not necessarily all nefarious. Some of it is claims were filled out wrong, and that's what we're trying to get through. But to my knowledge, on a magnitude basis, we don't have a lot of cases that have been flagged as being from fraudulent people.
There's been a concern nationwide about, especially that $600 when the federal government is chipping in. There are people that may stay home because they're making more. Is your plan related to that at all, and have you seen any similar program from other states?
No, I don't. We haven't seen any from other states, have we, Alex? That's it was in our the CFAC committee, the Financial Advisory Committee, our rebounds committee. It was the input we were getting from them, the input I was getting from legislators, from businesses, from other people, that the level of compensation was so high that people would just. It wasn't that they were saying they wouldn't go back to work. It was just this big incentive for them not to go back to work. The $600 add-on terminates either the 25th of July or the end of July, July 31st. So we're putting this in to try and incentivize people to say, both the employer and the employee, to say, let's get back to work. And that is part of the motivation for us to do that.
Is it retroactive for folks that
Yes,
were laid off?
March 1st.
What have you been hearing from the businesses? Because obviously that's a big challenge for them as they try to get up and running again to have this issue. So, have you spoken?
Well, I mean, we've been hearing a lot from businesses, and one of the issues is there's a risk premium to employees going back to work. So, I mean, even if it wasn't for the financial incentive, there's that risk out there. One of the things we've been doing for businesses is our PPE fulfillment center that's just across the street, and we're current. The claims we had for PPE. So, part of the problem with the economy and getting businesses back to work were people's comfort level, having enough PPE and inventory, all those other things. So I think the combination of this incentive, the rebound grants, the PPP from the federal government, and there's too many P's in all these acronyms, but one of them is a program for businesses, and the other one is the mass hand sanitizer and gloves, which is being put out of the Department of Administration.
There's likely people watching at home live right now who've waited 9, 10, 11 weeks for their unemployment, and it's frustrating. At the same time, it's difficult for the Department of Labor to go from record low to record high unemployment. With all that said, to people at home that have waited months without unemployment payments, what's your message to them as they continue to try and pay their mortgage and pay their bills and buy groceries?
Believe me, we talk to a lot of people, and it is, if I could wave a wand and have it fixed, we are addressing that through multiple fronts. The first thing we did was start paying overtime. The second thing we did was call back former employees that had the technical expertise in the complexity of unemployment. There's almost 80 different issues that some of these claims have to address. That, how it's filled out, identifying your previous employers, filling the form out right. There's about 80 different issues. So we put more overtime, more phone lines, more people, new people. We have to train the new people, the call center, and then we've also got outside consultants looking at what we're doing here and what's happening in other states and how we can automate some of these more vanilla claims, the most complicated ones, because of the laws from the federal government and the state government really require a highly skilled claims person to address. So we are looking at every option. If somebody's got another one, we'll look at it.
And understandably, it took time to train everybody up and staff up the call centers. Do you feel like at this point the Department of Labor is running full force?
Well, we're running full force. The question is, can we add? Because if I go hire another 20 people, I got to take some of the people that are now handling claims and put them in to training those other people. So that's part of the issue. We think we've got it balanced. I'm pleasantly surprised. The report I got was that the call center has been able to handle quite a few of these claims before they have to refer them to those other ones. And I'm saying, well, if they can do that as they get trained, the call center people get trained, we can maybe ramp up the call center more. So we're looking at all the options. Melissa.
As a follow-up to that, your crowning achievement your first year was removing barriers for business when it came to government red tape. Was there too much red tape in the system for the people of Idaho to file for unemployment in the first place? And if there was, why not scramble the way you did last year to remove that red tape?
Well, if it's in rules, we can do it. If it's in law, we've got a bigger issue. There's probably two aspects of it. One of them is the previous employment history and verifying that previous employment history. And we've looked at that. We've had the Attorney General look at it. That's one of the big issues. If I could do it regulatorily, we'd be doing it right now. But these are statutory, and we've looked at them, and they're pretty complex. And unwinding them is one of the things that I didn't want to do in all the rules, saying I didn't want to undermine the legislative intent. The legislative intent is that we have a very low level of fraud. I got a quote in one of my notes from one of the other states. But it's a good one. If I can remember it, I will try. But the issue is, for years we've built a system to slow and create incentives for people to not file for unemployment to work. Now we've flipped the switch, and now we're trying to get this money out, and we've got that old system that's kind of slowing us down. And this was from a quote I got from somebody, maybe it was one of the governor's communications, and that's the problem that all the states. Some of the states have implemented some technology that we don't have here in Idaho that by default, when you're filling out the form, you're answering some of the questions. As I said earlier, we're one of the top states in filing, but we get them filed, and then all of a sudden these 80 issues pop up, and we don't have a good automated system to address those 80 complaints, and that's what's slowing down the system.
What are you hearing about bars opening?
About which, John?
About bars. Michael Deeds had a story today.
It was a good one.
Saying when the downtown bars closed up early Saturday because things seem to be going through the inside of people waiting were just bunched up and they didn't feel like they should allow that.
I think that's part of the wisdom of the recommendation from CDC about staged opening. We wanted to maintain, I don't know why I didn't bring my prop, Emily, but that healthcare capacity, we wanted to maintain that healthcare capacity, and we opened everything up at once. We were worried about it, but that story was a good one because it talked about the fact that there's some peer pressure between bars and customers to do the right thing. That's going to continue as we go on, and particularly we have better testing and better tracing to where if some event happens and we have more cases, the public, the businesses, the employees will all know about it. And so that the point was they had them scattered out in the bar, but the waiting room to get in was a place where there was physical distancing was almost impossible. So that's a case in point, and I'm going to need your help as we go forward, the press's help in making that point to patrons, employees, and businesses about the right thing to do to continue to protect our sacrifice that we all made during this last 8 or 9 weeks, and that good progress we've made will be lost if we have a super spreader event.
How about yesterday, I was out on the Greenville and didn't find it like any day last year. People very close together.
Well, you know, John, some of the empirical evidence of Memorial Day weekend is that there were a lot of horror stories about Memorial Day weekend. But the fact that almost all these closer activities were outside and we haven't seen a spike in number goes back to what Dr. Hahn and Dr. Bridges told my coronavirus working group early, is that there's every indication that this coronavirus is very susceptible to UV light. And so outside, I was always puzzled by these states that had sunbathing banned where people are out by themselves in the sun, and why that was such a problem. I mean, unless you're right next to somebody, that perhaps may be one of the safest places you could be. And we're seeing that empirical evidence as we see places where there's high densities of people and there's no spread. It's because they're outside, there's good ventilation and that UV light. And I think we're going to see that on playgrounds. The issue in playgrounds is going to be less if it's in the sunshine, but you want to worry about the bathrooms and some of those other areas because there's very good evidence. We were one of the first states to go out and get UV light we use in the food processing industry and modify it for air circulation, particularly in long-term care facilities.
Governor, while we're there, I wanted to ask you about the activation of customers' National Guard troops to DC. DC mayor has said that
That's above my pay grade. The National Guard Bureau, we've still got guards here. The National Guard Bureau, as is often the case in whatever the disaster is, asked if we had some people. I talked to General Garshak. I says, you know, what's your recommendation? It says these people are ready to go. They're ready to serve. You know, these are some of the people that you know we've been talking about for what other uses we can have. That wasn't the case yesterday when we got the call from the Guard Bureau. So.
But as far as the Guard, it seemed like it was a voluntary thing.
Yes.
And they had no problem filling the spots.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about Idaho and our Idaho?
That's a very good point. The fact that almost instantly we had that big of a contingent that was ready to go, and not that I have anything against Washington D.C., but that they were ready and willing to go on a voluntary basis, and I think it just speaks to not only the Guard but Idahoans also. So Godspeed. I hope they stay safe. And my understanding is these guards, men and women, will be embedded with park police, other functions. They won't be out on their own. They'll be basically backup, like the Guard is often used. But they didn't ask to take any of our tanks.
Yeah, it was almost like they're bringing them on to kind of give the Guardsmen out there kind of a break.
Yeah, some of these areas have just had you know, a lot of activity, and everything you do during this pandemic has a higher friction cost in it. You know, spacing, hygiene, all those things you do. So there was I think I read a couple of reports this morning about our upcoming fire season. It's the same thing. Firefighting. We had a little talk about that at the land board. Is are we prepared for a whole different regime for firefighting?
While we're on the topic, I was wondering if you had a comment on the protests that have been happening not only across the nation but here in Idaho. Especially considering that Idaho consistently has been in the top 10 states with officer-involved shootings.
Well, I mean, I think the people that attended, the organizers, obviously the Capitol, the staff here at the Capitol Mall, our Idaho State Police, the Boise Police. I have conversations with the mayor. It was exemplary. There was a lot of friction there at certain times, and I'm very proud of them. But I think the tone was set when they had that event by all the Idahoans that showed up there to voice their concern about the issue about George Floyd's death and that part of it, and that set the tone for a much more rational discussion about the entire issue of discrimination, of police issues. I would add, you said about the number of shootings in Idaho, the training that our public safety officers go through today compared to the training that was a generation ago is paying off in spades now, because they are really able to handle a critical situation with great finesse and grace.
What would you think about armed militia type people who showed up to counter the
Well, I mean, the net of the activity from both sides was the fact that people have a right of redress, they have the right of free speech, they have all those rights to travel, and I think the net of it is, I know people did the right thing in Idaho. So, one more question, Keith.
Just to understand, when the National Guard comes down with their directive like that, do you have any options or authority, or do you need to check and that's something?
No, it was my call. Some states, I think we were the 12th state. Some states didn't send, but some states had, had their guard deployed in a lot of other areas. Our guard was supposed to be in Europe right now, so they were queued up to go to Europe, so they were around and available. So it's the governors, when the Guard Bureau calls up or another state calls up, the governors are ultimately the people who make the decisions.
So why did you decide to send our guard?
Because I was asked by the National Guard Bureau, and the senior staff at the Guard said it was a good thing to do. So, one more question.
On the coronavirus numbers, it seems in the last week we've had some higher numbered days than we'd been seeing in the past. As we head towards phase 4, is there any concerns about hitting the benchmarks?
Well, always. I mean, we put those benchmarks in for a reason. The most critical of all the different benchmarks is our ICU hospital bed capacity, and it is still good. But if you have those other numbers that are in the criteria, you run out of PPE, you have a big spike in numbers. It's really been regional recently. It's like it started in the Wood River Valley, flowed down to Twin Falls, came over here, and now it's just going up the Snake River, it seems like. And a lot of it is just people's awareness. Some of these communities where they didn't have a lot of cases where, it won't be here, and now we've got confirmed community spread in almost all the counties. So, but for sure in all the regions. So, okay, Keith, last question. I think people are ready to go back to work, but as I've said all along, there's not a safety healthcare silo and an economic silo. The confidence of employees, customers, consumers, and even people that are getting ready to deploy capital people need to know they're safe. If we continue to manage this, and this is not going to be eliminated until there's either a great treatment or most likely a vaccine. We have got to manage this, and I think we've shown that we are, and we will continue to do that. About the tagging on the Capitol building, I was very sad about it. It was good that our law enforcement, both the security here at the Capitol, my Idaho State Police and the Boise City Police worked together, and of course the reaction from people around the state has been, this is unacceptable, and it was unacceptable, but we will get it taken care of. Everybody in Idaho loves this old building, and we want to take care of it. And I know it was a stupid thing and not the right thing, and we will go on. And I mean, even part of the people that were part of that was where I heard most of the outcry were from people that wanted to show up here and erase that, which is a little difficult on this sandstone. So with that, thank you all very much.
And you just heard Governor Little during his news conference regarding unemployment in our state. He announced a return to work one-time bonus to encourage Idahoans to return to work and employers to bring them back. We will have more on this coming up at noon. We'll see you then.